Welcome to your National Museum of American History. My name is Kathleen Franz. I am the interim director for the Lemelson Center for the Study of Invention and Innovation. And I'm here to welcome you and introduce the program for this afternoon. So on behalf of the center, this is our Innovative Lives program for this afternoon, and we are featuring Arielle Rausin and Adam Bleakney. All right, so we're on stage. We'll get a more full bios on them in a few minutes. So for those of you that are here for the first time joining us, the Lemelson Center is the Smithsonian's leader in studying invention and innovation and encouraging creative identity and inventive creativity. We do this through exhibitions, through public programs like this one, and through our Spark Lab, which is just here around the corner. So if you're interested in the Lemelson Center's offerings, please check out our website and our social media feeds. Our annual Innovative Lives program series presents unique opportunities for audiences to meet contemporary inventors like the folks you see on the stage, for live conversations that we hope demystify who inventors are, what they look like, and how inventiveness is cultivated. To celebrate the brand new exhibition by the Lemelson Center, Change Your Game, we're dedicating this year's Innovative Lives series to thinking about sports. We hope that after today's conversation, you'll take some time to explore Change Your Game, which opened on March 15th. And is really just right around the corner here. The family-friendly exhibition explores the dynamic role of invention and technology in sports. It asks who invents for sports and why, and how can we discover and nurture our own creative identity. The bilingual exhibition highlights the motivations and practices of diverse inventors, and it includes Arielle. So she is in the exhibition. The exhibition also invites all of us to think about how we can become game changers in our daily lives. All right, so before we start, I have just a couple of housekeeping things to say, so we're all on the same page here. First, hold all of your questions until the end of the conversation up here, and then folks from the Lemelson Center will be coming around with microphones, and they will take your questions. In addition, we need to say that this program is designed for all ages, and that it follows the Smithsonian Code of Conduct, which outlines civil and respectful engagement from all of us throughout a live program. The program is being recorded and will be available to watch on the Lemelson Center's website in the next couple of weeks. Lastly, be sure that your cell phones are silenced. All right, now I'm going to warmly welcome our moderator, Meg Maher. Meg is an award-winning curator and producer of more than 63 exhibitions and a dozen accompanying websites, including our recently opened Change Your Game exhibition, on which she was one of the curators. In addition to her work for the Smithsonian, Meg has created permanent exhibitions for the reopening of the International Spy Museum and temporary exhibitions for the New York Public Library. She is co-author of Inventing for Sports, to be published later this year from Smithsonian Scholarly Press. All right, Meg, over to you.
Thank you, Kathy. It is my delight to welcome to the stage Arielle Rausin and Adam Bleakney. Just to give a little background, Arielle is a wheelchair marathoner, inventor, and entrepreneur. As a college student in 2015, she created an inexpensive, ultra-lightweight athletic glove using a 3D printer, which helped her race faster for longer. She founded Ingenium Manufacturing the following year to make her invention widely available to other para-athletes. Rausin currently serves as director of international chapters at Achilles International, an organization that's dedicated to transforming the lives of people with disabilities through athletic programs and social connection. Adam Bleakney is a 3-time Paralympian, coach, and inventor. As head coach of the University of Illinois wheelchair racing team, he mentored Arielle on and off the track, providing inspiration and encouragement to her in developing her 3D printed racing glove. In 2017, he established the Human Performance and Mobility Maker Lab, where students with and without disabilities collaborate to design and develop assistive technology. Now a faculty member in the School of Art and Design and a research affiliate at the Beckman Institute, also at University of Illinois, Adam and an interdisciplinary team are currently prototyping, believe it or not, a hands-free robotic wheelchair. So let's welcome them to the stage and get things going. How are you guys?
Great, very happy to be here.
Good, happy to have you. So let's just start at the beginning. And Arielle, can you just give us a little rundown of how your glove came to be born?
Sure. So I grew up in Florida, and I decided to attend the University of Illinois to be on their wheelchair racing team after I met my coach and future teammates at a race in Florida, 15K. I didn't know exactly what to study, so I chose business. Sounded safe and smart, but my main focus was wheelchair racing for sure. And then in 2015, I was taking a class with a professor in the College of Business, and he told me that they had a Maker Lab, a class all about 3D printing and entrepreneurship, and that he invited me and all the students to take this class. And so it turns out that was the first Maker Lab in a College of Business, and that's at the University of Illinois. And so in that class, I needed to bring in an object to 3D scan. That was the first part of the project, and I had no idea what to scan or what to bring in. I was gonna bring in a keychain, something lame, and I was at practice twice a day, and I was brainstorming about it with Adam, and he's like, you should bring in a glove. And so the gloves that we used to use were molded, by hand, and you would melt plastic pellets, and it was built for each individual athlete. And once it broke, and you couldn't use it. It was really difficult to repair. The materials, they were pretty durable, but they also would melt in a hot car in the summer, which was a big problem sometimes. And so we thought by being able to scan it, we could easily replicate gloves, so an athlete wasn't stuck and limited to just one pair. They could print infinite numbers for different race conditions, and that's kind of the very, very beginning.
And what did you find out, this was just a school assignment, and I'm assuming you did a good job, got the A, but you learned that not only were these, gloves to protect your hands, but they actually had real performance benefit.
Yeah, exactly. That's something that I don't think I predicted. I don't know if you foresaw it, but we were we designed it, or the idea was so we could replicate the glove. But it turns out when we were able to 3D print it, you can change the density and the infill patterns in 3D prints, and so we were able to make it extremely lightweight, but also still really durable. And so wheelchair racing is similar to cycling. Every gram and pound and ounce counts. So you really want your equipment to be as lightweight and aerodynamic as possible. And so by removing weight from the gloves while still making them really durable, that's what we found pretty early in the prototype stages was a surprising success.
Yeah. So do you want to we have a couple visuals to show. Can we start off with slide 2?
Sure. So on slide 2, this is a replica of the glove that we 3D scanned. And so it's what we call a groove glove now. And the way that it works is you wear it like this, so your thumb goes in there. And it's very different. A racing wheelchair is very different than a regular wheelchair. So in my regular wheelchair, I'm propelling it by grabbing a ring. but in a racing wheelchair, you propel it by punching a ring. So you really want a really nice hard surface like this glove so you can get the maximum amount of energy transfer from your body into your ring of your racing chair. And Coach knows the whole stroke pattern really well, better than I can say it. But you start here, we picture the ring as a clock, and you're really just starting at 1 o'clock and powering all the way through 6 o'clock, and you have a release and lift at the end. And so that's what slide 2 is. And then this glove, this groove glove, is designed for more experienced athletes that have a lot of years pushing on a racing chair. Well, I guess not anymore, but it used to be you would start out on a flat glove and then you would graduate essentially to this groove glove. But we wanted to make something that was maybe more accessible for beginners and grassroots athletes. So that's why on slide 7.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay.
I fast forward a little bit. On slide 7.
Can we go to slide 7?
That's the flat glove. Sorry, I thought that was slide 3. That's the flat glove that you see here. And that's just so kids and athletes who are just beginning, it's a little easier for them to get used to the equipment, the stroke style, pushing, etc.
Yeah, and if you go to slide 8, there's a wonderful photo of a young racer completing a course in using the flat glove. Mm-hmm. Did you want to just talk a little bit about the patent illustration where it shows the insert?
Sure, yeah. So on slide 5, that's one of the images from our patent application, and that kind of, you can see the internal structure of the glove. So that's a honeycomb infill is what we call it. And so that shape is really what allows it to still be extremely durable, but also lightweight. So when you're 3D printing, you can have a density and infill, 100% would be it's, completely solid. And when we were designing the glove, we thought it would probably have to be, at least 50 to 70% infill. That way it would be strong enough to withstand the really, high amount of power that some athletes can apply into this glove and into their ring of their racing chair. But what we found out was it was actually really fairly durable at around 15% infill. So that was able to keep it really lightweight and extremely strong. And we played around with a lot of different infill patterns. So we started out with something that's just going to do a really fast print on the 3D printer. So kind of like a crosshatch pattern. And that's it prints quickly, which is the benefit, but definitely not as strong and durable as this honeycomb shape. So now there's tons of infill patterns that you can just get from your 3D printing software to play around with, but we still use this honeycomb shape. We found that it works really well for our application.
Can you give people a sense, like the difference in the weight between the pelted, the ones you had a hand mold that were solid plastic, and your product?
Sure.
And why that was, the weight is such a big deal?
Yeah. So I think, I forgot the exact numbers of how much weight it took off, but I want to say it's at least 50% lighter than the original glove. And that just makes a huge difference. And so maybe it's, 100 grams or so. And over the course of a marathon, we estimate 10,000 strokes in the course of a marathon. And so that 100 grams over 10,000 strokes could be a few seconds at the end of your race that you're saving time in. And right now, people are winning major marathons by fractions of seconds. And so, 1 or 2 seconds could be a really big game changer. It could be a really really big performance increase.
So Adam, can you just give a little sense of how you kind of helped her in inspiring the idea and throughout the whole process?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm always excited when I get athletes like Arielle, who are business majors, people who are really smart, but also have an acumen for innovating and making money with products, so taking them to market, which Arielle had all those characteristics. And so so early on, as she told the story, she had shared with me that she was in a 3D printing class, and I didn't know much about the technology at the time. I knew it was for me, it was new, and I thought there was a lot of opportunity for our sport and merging into taking advantage of that technology. And when we had the conversation, I'm like, well, to me, gloves seems like the frontier, right? The previous big change in gloves had come in the early 2000s when we shifted from a soft mitt like
hold
this.
that guy up.
This is usually comes without the duct tape. That's Arielle's personal touch because they would wear out. But these gloves they were ubiquitous in the sport from the early 90s into the late 90s, early 2000s. Then the next big shift was to access thermoplastic material, so pellets. You put them in boiling water, let them soften up, stick your hand in the water real quick, pull it out, hopefully don't burn yourself. Arielle burned herself with a boiling pot of water when she was younger, so there were some risks involved. Then you put it under cold water, and then it solidifies, and you can have a custom bespoke club that's specific to your hand and the way you push.
How long did that take to create a set, a pair of gloves?
I mean, you could build a really crummy set in like 20 minutes, but like ones that were really good, probably, 3 to 4 days of just going back and forth, because there was no science to it. It was just art, like
sculpting.
You try to get symmetry left and right. Well, you want to get one correct to start with, and then you try to match, and you never could.
Perfectly matched.
So then you just refine for 3 days, 3 weeks. I don't know. It took a while. It was really, really labor intensive. And the upkeep too, because they'd break and crack, and as Arielle said, over time they'd just get brittle or they'd overheat, you'd lose them, whatever. But so there really hadn't been a change since the early 2000s when most of the athletes shifted over from a mitt into a custom thermoplastic glove. So I thought, well, maybe this is the opportunity with somebody who's driven, smart, also is going to get class credit for it, that we can really take advantage of that.
There's a motivation for
Oh
that.
yeah, needed the
And
A.
the others. And Arielle also had access to a multi-million-dollar scanner at our science institute. Also a good reason to use Arielle on this project. So that she was able to scan these gloves, which is not easy to do, to get a good, perfect scan. That's you have to have the right equipment, and you have to know what you're doing to do that. So a big part of the process. So I said, look, let's try it. Let's do this, and we'll scan a glove, and I suggested initially a flat glove just because that was a little more common, a little easier to use. At the time, most of my athletes on the team used more of a flat glove. Some used the groove glove. And that was it. That's kind of started. And then
that sounds like wonderful motivations, for your assignment, but really like to have to create usable equipment that takes 3 days to make, and then if it breaks, you gotta make another one.
Yep.
So, huge advantage of 3D printing.
Yeah, I think too that, and Arielle can talk to this, but there was also, I think for both of us, there was a real motivation to provide lower cost equipment to athletes with disabilities. I mean, that's a barrier for access. It's very prohibitive because the equipment costs so much.
Can you give a little cost comparison of like?
So the gloves on the market at the time, if you wanted to buy a pair of mitts, that was around $300 for a pair, maybe last a year. The thermoplastic material was probably $100, $150, but a lot of time and labor.
Yeah.
This offered the opportunity to create opportunities for participation for athletes with disabilities at a super low cost, because that's a nickel product in material, right? That's probably a 10-hour print. I don't know, a quarter cent.
Speaking to this, sorry.
Oh, am I missing? Oh, okay. Okay. And I don't know if that's a quarter worth of material. If
Yeah. No, it's the plastic is very affordable. The most expensive piece for sure is the rubber
Yeah.
that we make. Yeah. And but yeah, no, much more cost efficient than prior gloves.
So can you also just talk like through, you know, what was involved in like prototyping and, you know, what strategies did you kind of use as part of your invention process?
Sure. I wouldn't say my strategies were very planned and thought out. It was, it was basically print a glove in the lab. At the time, the lab I used the one primarily in the College of Business, and then I take it back to our training center and, just test it. I would test it. I'd have my teammates test it. We would, kind of get a little rough and throw it against the wall or roll over it in our wheelchair eventually and just see, how strong, how durable they really were. And so that was a lot of the prototyping in the very beginning, just to make sure it was, strong, durable, and the right material. We started out with ABS as a type of plastic we started out with. And then we eventually had more success with PLA, so then we were primarily printing, and still today we print in PLA, it's a type of plastic you can use for 3D printers. So that was the process in the very beginning. And then we had to create a design that was not just meant for one individual athlete, eventually, a design that we were going to sell and launch on our website, and it had to fit a large variety of athletes with different hand sizes and widths and different finger lengths. And so then it was a pretty large, long process to come up with a design that didn't have like handle that would, trap someone with a slightly larger palm and make it really uncomfortable. So we had to iterate a few times on that. And then coming up with our different sizes was kind of a lot of trial and error, adjusting, because it's not just exactly scaling up the glove for a bigger size or someone with a bigger hand. There's other nuances to it as well. So, you have to increase different widths. So playing with the geometry, I used I played around with a lot of different sculpting software when I was designing it. But it's really rudimentary. It's push and pull of these geometries. And so it's really just like sculpting. And so now Adam has it down to a more exact science with his CAD files. So that's really good. But it took a while. It probably took at least 6 months, I think, to come up with a design that I felt confident and ready to begin selling from when we first started pushing with them.
And did you encounter any challenges or like learning curves along the way?
For sure. I think one of the largest learning curves for me was learning how to fix and maintain 3D printers, because they break quite a lot. And I mean, we were putting a crazy amount of hours on them. We started out with just one printer of our own and then grew to 6 printers, and so just slowly scaling up. But there's like when you're, something in your home breaks, you can call someone to come by and fix it. There wasn't really that for 3D printers, so it was a lot of YouTube and reading manuals and just kind of getting in there. I fried a few motherboards. I definitely had my fair share of mistakes in there, but I enjoyed the process. I think it's fun to tinker, and I had no engineering background or experience at all, just a business major. So I never really had dealt with tools in that way and taken something apart. I don't think I've ever really done that. But in order to be able to get orders out on time, I had to become really proficient. And then eventually was teaching others how to do similar things. And now, and the really cool thing too about 3D printing is it's such a rapidly changing technology, is that every 6 months or so, a cheaper, better printer would come out. So then it was always adjusting and learning to that new technology of the new printer. And that was fun and exciting. And we were just kept getting, better printers at better prices. So, our product just eventually became better. And now I think our printers break a little less than they used to. So that's good. They're a little more durable. But to print a glove, it takes about 12 hours for one. So about a day for a pair. And so, we would just have them running 24/7 essentially. So it does, definitely puts a lot of wear and tear on them.
So can you just tell the audience, because I found it astounding, the prototype and what you were able to achieve just with your initial prototype.
Sure. So the very first pair of gloves that we printed, just in the lab, they didn't have, like the nice fancy vents that we had. They didn't have any strap holes. It was just, I just super glued everything on there. And yeah, it was very rudimentary, but I started pushing with it at practices, on the roller, and outside on the track. And then I kind of came up with this idea, whereas I was about to push the Boston Marathon, and I'm like, okay, if the gloves can make it all the way through the Boston Marathon, then I think it's like a pretty solid prototype. So I taped my original pair of gloves to my frame of my racing chair, so back up just in case, they did crack or split in half in the middle of the race, but they made it all in one piece and finished the race. And that was kind of the catalyst for my other teammates then wanting gloves of their own and starting to ask me to scan their gloves and print them gloves. And that really kind of snowballed into what eventually became the company.
It's amazing. Like, not too many inventors can have a successful prototype that they use on the very first shot.
It was lucky. So, it was very, very lucky.
Yeah. Can we just take a look at the video, slide 9, to just give people a sense of the biomechanics involved in wheelchair racing?
Do you want to walk them through the stroke?
Do you want me to,
And then I'd like
talk about it?
Yeah, then I want to turn to you,
So,
Adam.
I don't know what you're seeing right now, but the mechanics of propulsion are essentially two different phases. One where you're pushing, so you're actively applying force to the wheel, and then the recovery, so you're you're not applying force to the wheel. So it's a lot more detailed than that, but sure that would bore everyone in the audience, so I won't get into that. We can go into much finer detail, but that's it. That's about it. And as Arielle said, about 10,000 of those bad boys for a marathon on average. So it's a good amount of effort for the upper body, and the gloves are a critical piece that connect the athlete to the equipment, to the racing chair. So if they don't work, if you don't have a good fit or they're less than optimal, it really does detract from the performance. So we spend a lot of time on them, and just because they're such a high value piece of the equation.
So you had mentioned, Arielle, that it sounded like you enjoy tinkering. You kind of more or less started when you were doing the glove. Now, how about you, Adam? Had you been a tinkerer from the beginning, way back when, or did you two kind of come to that a little later in life?
Yeah, I mean, always a little bit here and there. I think similar to Arielle. I think more so when I started using a wheelchair. Just one, because in terms of assistive technology, there's just not a lot of options on the market, and those that are on the market may not be what you want, or they may not be very good, or they're probably overpriced. And so you tend to design and innovate probably for yourself initially, with the idea that if it helps you and works for you, it'll probably work for other people too. And then two, you add the element of sport and performance, and much like Arielle, in any competitive athlete, you look for every opportunity to get an advantage over your opponent, and to find ways to improve and to get better and faster and stronger. And for our sport, equipment is a big part of that. So tinkering probably too much at times. You kind of make yourself slower because you keep messing with different parts of your equipment too frequently. But that definitely was a driving force. And then I think that for me that extended into not just sport, but other areas of my life, and looking at access and introducing convenience into just activities that I did during the day, just boring general activities of daily living. And again, there's not a lot of options on the market generally. So as the user of what you're inventing, I think that's a motivator. It keeps you engaged.
Can we cue slide 13? Want to chat a little bit about what you've been working on lately?
Okay, yeah. Actually, this is a really exciting project that I'm working on, and Arielle was a part of this team from the beginning stages when she was still on campus. And what you can see in that slide is the first sketch of a ball chair. So no wheels, it just drives around on a ball. So if you're familiar with BB-8 from Star Wars, that was really the inspiration, was to create basically a chair that balanced on a ball. But before that, it was, so I guess the idea wasn't just to build a BB-8 chair. It was rather figuring out a way to use technology so that Arielle and I can move around without having to use our hands. Because when you move around a wheelchair, your hands are occupied, right? They're pushing on the wheels, so you can't really do much anything else very well. Like I couldn't carry these two. If I didn't have Arielle's dad to carry me these 2 cups of coffee, we'd be out of luck. I'd probably burn my lap. But there's things like that, or when my kids were younger, I wasn't able to hold their hand when we crossed the street, so usually I'd block traffic, and then I'd tell them to sprint across the street, and then I'd end up hopefully not dead on the other side with them. But so basically, I wanted to create technology that would liberate the hands from propulsion and just open up opportunities and the lives of people that were wheelchair users that otherwise aren't easily accessible or convenient. So this was actually, the first design was with wheels, and I think we have some sketches of that. But ultimately, the idea of being balanced on a bowling ball and rolling around just with your trunk is really cool. So I think that's where we got excited and started that project. So we've been working on it for a while, because Arielle was early on, and she's old.
Yeah, maybe we can look at a couple other sketches that Adam had done. Slide 14.
Yeah, so this was one of my early sketches of this would be in this grade, I can go across grass and carry coffee. Or beer. I don't know which is in there. That's coffee. I can't see.
Both.
Yeah. So, my hand's in my pocket, right? So something is impossible. Arielle can't do that. Once she goes into grass in this chair, really hard to push through. So the simple pleasures in life. I want to make it more convenient and accessible for everybody. So that was just an early sketch of a happy person with coffee or beer in hand.
But that's great, that gives you a lot more independence and autonomy. So I can see how that's super important invention. So where are you with that now?
So now we have a working prototype that I've used probably for 20 hours, and it looks a little bit different. It's more engineering than what you saw in 13, slide 13. But it actually works, which is we have a team of engineers and designers. That's the other cool part of this project, is we brought in experts like Arielle and others, and then engineers, designers, all into one space. And that's not easy to do, bring people from the engineers have a different brain than designers do, and to try to get them to speak the same language and to collaborate, not easy.
So can you talk a little bit more about how you talk to one another to collaborate?
I definitely feel like I'm I broker a lot of the agreements between them most of the time, and because just an understanding of the realities of engineering. So engineers always want to build the newest, fastest rocket. It has to have all the gadgets, has to be the first ever. It doesn't matter if it's actually useful to anybody, it's just got to be the best. And then designers want to build, they want to be super abstract, exotic, looks great, but then probably isn't usable. So you got to get them in the same room where they're speaking the same language, and you find a balance point between the two. And that's why I think people, individuals who are at the center of the design and the development and engineering, who are actually using the technology, is really important. So having Arielle in the room was really important, because she has the design and the engineering, but also understands the day-to-day and the usefulness of the technology, the utility, and speaks with a great degree of expertise and authority, right? And so in that sense, then you can generally tell the engineers and designers what to do, because you have that authority.
Yeah, something I remember in our early meetings with the BallBot was, the more features and things that you add to it, the heavier it gets. And for us, we needed to be able to put this chair in our cars when we drive, or I live in New York now, but when I do go back to somewhere where I'll drive, it has to be able to quickly get in and out of a car, and I need to be able to pull it in and not, have to have a big minivan with a ramp. I can, use it in any car, and so it's more, accessible for everyone. And so, getting engineers to understand that and how that is going to affect the build and the design is, crucial. And I think a lot of inventions that I see designed for the disabled community only view it from one lens, like Adam was saying, just the engineer lens. So they look like they're made in a hospital, and they're really, not aesthetically pleasing, or maybe they look nice, but they're not functional for, the community at all. And so I think, it's just really, really crucial to always have someone, a user, in the room.
So I was just curious where you are as far as bringing this idea to commercial. And I see, if we could cue slide 16, which shows a patent that had been applied for the wheelchair.
Yeah. Is that on? Not on. Now it's on.
Yeah, give it a sec. Should be good.
All right.
Flip it up.
Yeah, it's on. It's on. So we and Arielle is on the patent with me, and a group of the designers and engineers. We filed, so we have a patent on it for whatever it is, 30 years. So the idea is, within the next probably 6 to 8 years, to bring to market. So obviously we have some definitely some things that we need to address in terms of cost and production processes that definitely there's a lot of unknowns that I don't even know about yet. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things we do know about that we need to identify. But in terms of we're on generation 3 now. So we've done a generation 1, which is on slide 16. Really just a proof of concept. Was like, hey, can you put a chair on a ball and drive it around with a joystick and it won't fall off? And we could. We did. And then the second prototype, Gen 2, was, well, can someone sit on it and then drive it around just using their trunk, right? So no hands, just using their trunk and really small trunk movements in order to drive it around. Less than what you'd see on a Segway. So a Segway, you have to lean a little bit more. With this device, it's very, very minimal, and you can control the device. So we want to know if we can do that, and we did. We want to know, can we drive it up ramps? Can we drive it over small little curb cuts? And we can. So all those are important. in order to ensure that we can take it from the lab out into the real world. So now we're on Gen 3, so we're increasing the torque, we're increasing the payload, so the capacity, so up to 250 pounds of body weight that it can tolerate. We need more torque so we can get over grass, we can get over gravel, and we can get people into outdoor terrain more easily. So we'll work through that, and then hopefully within, as I said, 6 to 8 years, we can have something that's affordable and usable on the market.
Wonderful. So since you both were at University of Illinois, I have to ask, is there something about the university environment there that has really disposed itself to inventing, and maybe perhaps for people with differing abilities?
Sure. So, I chose to go to the University of Illinois not only for the wheelchair racing team, but also for their legacy of accessibility. So they were one of the first universities to welcome World War II vets with disabilities onto campus. So since the late 1940s, they've kind of been on the frontier of accessibility on both in, I would say, building design, but also through all aspects of the university. So that was a really big appeal to me. I knew I wouldn't have to fight for ramps or building access to get to my lectures. I knew I would have, a big support group of people there at the Disability Resource Center, and I knew I'd have the wheelchair racing team, which was the biggest draw, and also the community is really important and big. There was, since they have that legacy, it's probably one of the universities in the country that has so many students with disabilities and faculty. I would say one of the top, and so. I had never been around other people with disabilities growing up. I was always the only one, so that was a really big appeal to kind of find my community that way, and that was definitely life-changing. And in terms of inventing, I think the Maker Lab at the College of Business was really crucial for me. Our Beckman Institute is where I would go use the Steinbichler Comet L3 scanner, which is where we first scanned that glove. So having access to that technology was incredibly important. The university has a long legacy as well of engineering, a really great engineering school. And so I think that was super important. So I think it was probably, the engineering background along with the accessibility and inclusion background that really was able to kind of guide me towards this entrepreneurial path.
I don't have a lot to add. I think that's exactly right. The idea of innovating and user-centered design is a part of our legacy at the University of Illinois. The resources offered for students that have disabilities. Some of the cool facts of our university is we were the first university to install curb cuts on campus, specifically so that students that were wheelchair users could get around and access. We validated many of the architectural standards that were later codified in state and federal law. So many of those standards that are adopted by the ADA were researched on our campus in the space that Arielle went to train at and where I work today. And so anyways, there's a tradition of history of innovation, creating sometimes out of necessity, but out of a drive to increase access and opportunity, whether it was daily life or sport.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to wrap up, so last question. What advice might you give to people who are interested in inventing, have maybe dipped their toes in or maybe not, and trying? And particularly for those who might be interested in user-centered design, what thoughts do you have for them?
I think that I would say that it doesn't cost a lot of money or any money at all if you have things laying around the house that you can start to fiddle around with and tinker with. I think just the idea of seeing opportunity in anything, maybe a couple of nuts and bolts, and maybe a spare part from a little dishwasher. Maybe there's an opportunity to build something out of those parts. So seeing opportunity and then adapting that to whatever it is you're trying to design for and into. So I don't think it costs a lot of money. You just have to have the creative drive and the mindset that I'm going to make something out of these parts and make it work. And I think that's pretty common, certainly in Paralympic disability sport, that you just cobble stuff together and you make it work and you test and try it out on yourself.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think some advice I would give would be to find maybe pain points in your life, things that you want to fix and make a little easier, and then that can be, that can really spark an idea. And maybe if you can't think of any pain points that you yourself experience in your everyday life, maybe going out and talking to other communities that experience difficulties or challenges. So, not just, the disabled community, but any community. Because there's a lot of things out there that can be improved, systems that can be fixed, new things that need to be made and invented. So I think, starting with your own lens, and then you can expand out and talk to others too. And then also just get started and try. It doesn't have to be anything big or fancy. You don't have to buy a 3D printer, even though they're really fun and they're pretty inexpensive, and you probably should. But if you don't want to do that, there's so many other ways that you can be inventive and creative and tool around in your everyday life. So I think it's just really fun way to start, and you never know where it could lead. It could lead to a business or just improving your everyday life. So I think I really encourage everyone to do it, and it's a great skill to have.
Well, thank you. We're going to stop talking and open up the floor for questions.
Meg, I have a question. Thank you for your presentation. I'm Allison Oswald, and I'm an archivist here on staff, and we document independent inventors. Can you talk about how you document your work? Do you sketch? What kinds of records do you create? And where are you keeping them?
Personally, I'm not great at record keeping. I have a hard drive, a terabyte, where I store all of my digital files. And I actually am not great at drawing or sketching at all. I think maybe for the glove I tried to do a few little sketches, but that's not my strong suit, so I'm more of a computer person. But Adam's really great at sketching, so he can talk about that.
Yeah, so sketching, and then CAD files, and then anything that I just do hands. I'm just taking parts and assembling that. I usually take photos, and then I store all those on our university server.
But do you cannibalize any of your prototypes? Like when you
Yeah.
take stuff apart, do you document that and then photograph it? Yeah, so you can see what you're doing.
Yeah.
Hi. Loud. Hi, I'm Fiona. I forget which one of you said this, but you said something about the gloves being the next frontier. So now that you've solved that problem, is there another frontier in wheelchair racing, like gear or other things that you want to innovate and change?
That's you.
Okay. One of actually in very close proximity to the gloves, one of the next big challenges for us, well, I don't compete anymore, but is creating some type of a surface that you apply to the glove to create optimal adhesion. So as it stands, you can see on these gloves that we're using just a black, it's a 3 mil thick black piece of rubber. And that actually is pretty low quality carbon filled rubber, but it's durable and it creates a good amount of adhesion. But it's really awful in wet conditions because, so I didn't say this, but on the wheel of the racing chair, you don't actually hit the wheel, you break it. There's what's called a hand ring, which is just a circular aluminum tubing ring that's you anchor to the wheel, and that's what you hit. So we call it a hand ring. But that's also coated with rubber. So rubber on rubber in dry conditions, really good transfer of force. Wet conditions, really, really bad. So it's akin to you trying to sprint on ice. So all that force is getting lost while you're trying to create, because there's no adhesion at all. And so I've been in the sport since 1996, and I still don't have a solution that works all the time for everybody. You don't have to think about it or worry about it. We use a lot of different things. We apply different products to the rubber, like pine tar, like a glue adhesive, which is Clister. You use it in Nordic skiing. We've used different suedes. I don't know. If you told me, like, hey, have you tried this? Probably I have. And it didn't work. So now we use sandpaper, which is the best. We use like a 40 or 30 grit sandpaper, so super abrasive. But then you also have to have the right rubber coating on the hand ring, or it doesn't work right. So all that is to say, that's like the next step, is finding a material that will really leverage the value of these gloves in all conditions, not just dry, but wet conditions. Because unfortunately, they don't call off races with the rains. Like the Boston Marathon isn't canceled because it's raining.
I wish.
Yeah, a lot of people do. So that's one. It seems like super low-hanging fruit, but it's not. I mean, I've worked with a bunch of companies trying to do that, and I don't know. So sandpaper, it is for now.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm Ashley. I'm a food historian here at the museum, but I was so curious to hear about the prototype that you tested during the Boston Marathon, and then you spread that knowledge among your team members about this new technology they could use. But beyond your team, how did word spread, or what marketing campaigns did you use to get your product out into the community? And I'm kind of curious to know now, are you the go-to brand, or what kind of market share do you have in this very unique space? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, great question. So it started, really organically, and I just was making gloves for my teammates. And then we're lucky enough at University of Illinois to be able to travel to races all around the world. So a lot of our teammates go to World Championships, they go to the Pan Am Games. We have races across the states that we go to. So, we would be traveling to these races, and the gloves are, pretty bright colored. That's a purpose. And so a lot of times people would come up and say, like, hey, what are those? Can we try them out? And the wheelchair racing community is a pretty tight-knit community, especially here in the States. There's not a ton of us. The sport is growing, I think, and so it was really word of mouth in the beginning, and just more and more athletes approaching me and asking me to print and scan them gloves. And then that's eventually why I actually started Ingenium, was I was really exhausted of doing it for free for everyone, and I was like, okay, I think it's time. And so it was originally just word of mouth. Then we created Instagram and a website when we launched in 2016. And that helped. And that, I think the website really helped with international sales, we ship to more than 30 countries now. So they're really worldwide. And also the racing abroad really helped as well. And so some of the first two athletes to use them in the Paralympics in Rio de Janeiro in 2016 were Amanda McGrory and Chelsea McClammer, who got silver and bronze medals, and Tatiana McFadden got a gold and a USA sweep. And so that was a really cool moment for Ingenium to have two medalists using the gloves, and we weren't even a year old at that point. So that was a really fun thing to market and talk about. And now lots of athletes have used our gloves in the Paralympics and races. And then something we did early on, which was important to me, was increasing access by reducing the price for grassroots programs buying, in bulk. So that way, usually they loan equipment for free to kids or beginners, and so we're able to get kids using these gloves right away, and it was a really cool experience. Every year in the States, there's a big competition called Junior Nationals, hosted by Move United now, and I went 2 years ago when it was in Colorado. And I think, it was about 90% of the kids on the track were using the Ingenium gloves. So that was really, really cool to see so many athletes out there using them. I think now almost everyone in the sport, I would say, uses 3D printed gloves of some kind. Some make them on their own. There's some international companies in other countries that use them, but we're actually the only company now in the US selling any kind of wheelchair racing glove. The other ones don't exist anymore, and so I would say, yeah, we have a fairly big market share in there, which is nice. It's a small, tight-knit community, and that obviously helps spread the word, but yeah, we're really, really lucky to be in that space.
Going once, going twice. Well, thank you, Arielle Rausin and Adam Bleakney, for joining us today, and thank you to our audience for tuning in.